At least once a year, we review abuse, neglect, and exploitation with all of our employees and our caregivers. It is important that you understand what your responsibilities are in regards to reporting. And since there is always a continuous rise of this going on in our state and in our nation, it's really important that you understand what signs to look for in regards to A&E. So, although when we think of abuse, we always think about the physical forms of abuse having to do with physical pain or impairment and things like that. If someone is pushing someone or hitting someone, we also have to be looking for signs of emotional abuse. This includes if people are, cursing at someone or yelling at them or making them feel bad in forms of humiliation or harassment. These can also be considered abuse, and we should be aware of that as well with our clients who are mostly in a vulnerable population. Neglect is the act of failing to give proper care to a client or to a person. This can have to do with denying them food or water, clothing, making sure that they have adequate shelter and hygiene. We do need to look out for this, especially in home care, because a lot of times clients are dependent on other people to make sure that they have the things they need, making sure that they have enough food, that their shelter is accurate. They're depending on other family members and things like that, and even you sometimes to make sure that those things happen. So if you go out to a client's home and you realize there's not enough food in the fridge for them to be properly nourished, if you notice that the house is in ill repute and it's not safe for them to be there, these are the kinds of things that you look for when you are reporting if a client is being neglected. Exploitation is the illegal use of a client's funds, property, or assets. So this has to do if you are notice that a family member is spending a client's money without actually doing things that will provide health or care or well-being for that client. If you notice that they are using money out of their account, if this client doesn't have enough food, but there's someone else that is in charge of all their funds. If someone misuses their funds by taking their bank account number or goes to taken care of financially, and if they're unable to take care of their own finances, there could be someone in charge of those finances that also might abuse those things. So we have to be on the lookout for that when we are out at clients' homes. So, what do we need to look for? As far as abuse, there's always physical signs if you're talking about physical abuse. So, if you notice that your client has bruises or cuts or something that they can't really explain, if they are all of a sudden have injuries that really aren't going along with the health concerns that they had before, some of those things can be signs of abuse. If your client is fearful of the person that is in a position of trust, such as another family member that's in charge of their finances or their living situation, and then all of a sudden they have fear of saying things around them that might get them in trouble or something like that. That's something that you can look for when you're talking about signs of abuse. Neglect, obviously, look for physical signs. If the client is dehydrated, if the client is hungry and not getting enough food, if the client is being left in the bed too long, they might develop pressure ulcers in places. If there's physical signs that the meds are being withheld and not given to the client on a regular cycle as they're supposed to be, look out for those things when you're talking about abuse. If there's changes in their weight and changes in their health, it's very important that we make sure that we're aware of what our client normally looks like, so we can notice if there's changes, sharp changes in their health condition, because that could be signs that they're being neglected. Exploitation, when we're discussing things that are going on with our clients' finances, a lot of times we don't know all the particulars, but can also look for signs of that. If the client is saying that they don't have any access to money, like if you're noticing that they're out of food a lot or they don't have the things that they need, and they say, well, I have someone else that does that, but you never see that person there, or you're not really sure how those exchanges go on, and you feel like it's putting your client in some sort of risk, that could be a sign that their funds are being exploited if they don't have access to purchase the things that they need. So if you suspect that your client is being abused, neglected, or exploited, you do have to report. It is not your job to determine whether this is happening. It is only your job to to report if you believe or suspect that something is going on. The Department of Protective Services, they will do the full investigation, and if it turns out that there's nothing going on, you cannot be harmed in any way by reporting and being concerned about your client. They will just say, it's unsubstantiated, and then they will move on. But you don't want to be the person who did not report and then something is going on with your client. So if you suspect, it is your obligation to report. You're supposed to report within 1 hour to this agency. So you want to make sure that you do your job and then not worry about any sort of consequences happening to you. If you suspect that you need to report something, the first thing you want to do is you want to call your supervisor at the office and let them know that you feel like something is going on with this client and that it needs to be reported. Then you want to call the Office of Protective Services and Regulatory Services in Texas. I have put the number on this slide. If you search for them as well, it will come up on your website. There is an online reporting center that you can use to report. If you suspect that your client is in some sort of immediate danger, if you feel like that they might be hurt right away and it's unsafe to leave them in the current situation in which you found this to be happening, then you can and should call 911. You don't want to leave your client somewhere that you might come back and they're actually in a worse situation or actually hurt from something that is going on. So make sure that you use that emergency services if you feel the need to. That is the end of this training. Make sure that you take the quiz, but also make sure that you sign saying that you understand about your obligations to report inside a Paylocity or pick up a paper option from the office. Thank you so much.